Welcome to Podtopia Insider, the podcast powered by Podtopia Network. Whether you're launching your first show or leveling up an existing one, we've got expert insights and recommendations to help you create, distribute, and monetize with ease. I'm Joe Massa, your guide to navigating the best tools and strategies to grow your podcast. Are you ready to optimize and streamline your show? Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Podtopia Insider, where we talk to the people that join Podtopia Network, whether they're podcasters, authors, business owners, or like this gentleman who's all three of those things. I'm very happy to introduce Mr. Adam Barney. He is the founder of Scale Smarter. He's an energy coach, a strategist, author of Make Your Own Glass Half Full, The Path to Empowered Optimism and Autonomy. He's also a host of the podcast, Is Anything Real in Paid Advertising? Welcome, Mr. Barney, to Podtopia Insider. How are you today, sir?
Thank you, Joe. Fantastic intro. Just to level set, it's Adam W. Barney, just to keep that important. I won't share too much on that side, but that goes back 5 generations on my paternal side. So I'm proud of that middle name and that middle initial. That middle name is Wellington, if you want to spell it out, actually.
That's awesome. I apologize for missing that. I did see it in there. I just didn't realize you were so into that. But that's awesome.
Good.
I love the
I
love the loyalty to the family. My middle name is Eugene, named after my grandfather. So
my father-in-law's name is Eugene as well. So
it's
there's
a solid name.
It is. He goes by Gene, but yes.
I always liked my initials. It's Gem. So I thought that was pretty cool. Like a diamond in the rough over here.
Right. Well, Joe, I'm fired up to be here on Podtopia Insider because I know the conversation isn't about the usual, let's say, hustle talk, right? It's about how we stay charged up while we build.
Yeah, and I love your mission and I love your energy coaching system. We'll get into the Energy OS system in just a little bit, but before we get into that, tell me a little bit about the Scale Smarter, business that you're running, and also the book and the podcast.
Right. Well, so I also call myself an energy coach, Joe, but how did I end up there? Before I started Scale Smarter, I spent over 2 decades in marketing and strategy, worked with startups, venture capital-backed teams, and what I like to call global giants like Microsoft, Akamai Technologies, big ad agency Digitas, where I spent about 10 years. Fortune 50 clients, huge budgets, $100 million in paid ad spend, and I lived at the pace and the pressure and the late night. Wasn't always Slack pings through that journey. We also used to be pinged through AOL Instant Messenger. Rest in peace, AIM. But, it was always the let's just push one more quarter kind of culture. And, I burned out through that journey, not just once, but multiple times. And, each time it hit differently. I realized I wasn't tired from the work itself. I was tired from the way I was working. That's when I started kind of asking better questions. Let's say, what if energy, not time, was the real currency of leadership? What if burnout wasn't a badge of honor, but instead it's a signal that the systems are broken? And Scale Smarter grew out of those questions. I didn't want to just help people work smarter. I wanted them to help them scale smarter and build the systems that grow their impact, but don't deplete their soul at the same time.
I think that's so valuable. And you're absolutely right. It's, time is obviously our most important currency. As people think it's chasing the mighty dollar, but you have to have the time, but the energy to also put into that time. And I think that's, you really nailed it on the head there. It was sort of a badge of honor to be like, I work 80 hours a week. And looking back, it's like, that's a terrible way to live. There's no quality of life there.
Right.
And really having the right systems in place to automate things and to hand off some of that busy work. And I know me and you are working on the back end to streamline even some of your current systems with your podcasting setup and everything. It's so valuable to audit yourself and see how much time and energy am I putting into this task? And is that task something that's really moving my needle? Or is it just me being busy, staying busy, staying busy, staying busy? So I love the idea behind all of that. And, what's a way that you help businesses scale smarter, for, using the name?
Well, I mean, a lot of what it comes down to, Joe, is not forgetting about the part that you need to reset and rebuild to scale sustainably. Like that sustainability piece of the measure is hugely important. So the foundation really comes down to what I call an energy OS system. And it's built around the simple truth is that energy is the most renewable form of capital that we all have. And, really, Joe, though, it's about measuring it. And after you measure it, you can manage it and then you can multiply it. And really that works then if you have that energy to allow you to scale anything, whether it's your business, your impact, your joy. I wish I could say that Energy OS is, about yoga mats, motivational quotes, 4 a.m. cold baths, but more than that, it's about structure. It's about the rhythms that actually make great leadership sustainable. I see three pieces to it, right? So there's measuring, right? So through energy audits and awareness, how do we spend our week versus how do we optimally spend our week, right? How do you audit your time? How do you design your dream week is what I actually like to call it, to start from a place of what would you do if you had everything balanced already? Then that helps to inform managing by, designing the systems and those habits, reframing the brain, using the neuroplasticity that we all have in our brains to increase the decision design and the effectiveness of that. And then you multiply it, by aligning yourself. You can align your teams, you can align your people, you can align your purpose and your processes so that energy compounds instead of leaks. And think about how sound waves emanate as we're on a podcast. Your energy ripples out almost like dropping one drop in the middle of a pond. And then you see those ripples start to just gently move out. And I've seen founders, CEOs double their clarity and focus in just 90 days by installing this framework. Of course, it's about long-term holistic transformational change, but that change can start in just 90 days. And of course, it's not magic. I would love to say, Joe, to the podcast today, I brought a magic wand and I just waved it, and all of the listeners, they could solve for these things. But it's about management of it. It's yourself, it's your bandwidth, and it really needs to become a belief system almost inside people. But when leaders start treating that energy as a metric, they stop reacting to exhaustion, which is bottlenecks and burnout, and start designing for what really leads to endurance. And that's the true game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really easy for founders, CEOs, solopreneurs to get in this mindset that they have to have their hand in every little detail, that you do burn out really, really quickly, even if you're really passionate about what you're doing.
Right.
And to find those ways to eliminate bottlenecks, but also I think to get that structure put in place. That is the biggest thing in the world, because humans by nature are inherently drawn to structure. It's to have something repeatable, and a routine is paramount as far as being productive, because we're certainly now in today's age of distraction. It's really easy to be like, I got to do this, but then an email came in, then my TikTok went off, and then this happened. And all of a sudden now I'm down 3 rabbit holes later doing something completely off topic because I don't have a structure in place. So I love the idea of having an energy OS system that you can sort of start to really get your head around, and then build your schedule around those sort of activities that bring back your energy and time and focus onto what really matters, which again is ideally going to free up your time to live life too.
Well, and it works at a personal operating system level also, right? What works for one person, one CEO that I coach versus the next CEO, it's never exactly the same. It's a different system that they sit in currently that needs to get pushed around. The corners need to get moved around on it, right? So it's about meeting people where they're coming from when I start working with them, not about me necessarily going in and saying, hey, this is the whole energy OS system. How many programs have I joined where I get sent 100 hours of YouTube videos to go watch when I start the program? I don't have time to do that, right? We all only have one of the few things that level sets every human on this planet still today, even with the evolution of AI and technology that we can rely upon, is that we all only have 24 hours in the day to get done what we need to get done. That's the same for someone who runs a $30 billion company as it is for you and I sitting here spending 20 or 30 minutes talking today, Joe, or our listeners, who I bet half of them are actually listening to this at 1.5 or 2 times speed. So it's not even 20 or 30 minutes. And it's not following that, speeding up everything in the world. It's actually about slowing down and uncomplicating things sometimes, right? And, even how many times have we faced personal challenges where we've needed resilience to come into play? And if we're laser focused sitting here on our computers, we don't find the answer. How many times? I can say hundreds of times the answer has come to me in the shower, walking the dogs in the morning, getting outside. That's when the magic happens. You have to step away from problems to find the solution. I would argue almost 100% of the time.
I think that's the best advice I've ever heard on this show. And it's something that I practice daily. Literally, whenever I'm feeling like I just am banging my head against the wall, whether it's like, how do I roll out this next program or product, or what's the vision? Where am I going next? How do I get unstuck? The best way is to literally get out of your seat and walk out of the room, unplug for a little bit and let sort of those creative juices come back to you while you're doing something that's completely unrelated, like walking
Ooh,
the dog or going to the gym
right.
or, whatever that looks like. But you also answered one of my other questions, which was, um, this isn't a cookie cutter program, which I absolutely love as well, because you're right. I've also signed up for many classes, courses, things that are these new systems you have to have, and it's just a template, and everybody gets the same one. And the reality is, you and me are different. We might do very
Right.
similar things, but what's bottlenecking you might be something I'm really great at, and what you're really great at might be something that I'm stuck on. So we
Right.
can't have the same exact program. You do have to meet people where they're at. But what I love about your whole personality and your vision and what you do, it's not just getting energy back, but you're also like this super optimistic, like, guy. And I love, even you wrote a book about it. So real
Right.
quick, tell us a little bit about the book, about, the Empowered Optimism and Autonomy book.
I mean, it's what drove me, Joe, in my own journey. I have to say, making your own glass half full. The idea for that came from this really simple vision I had of one of the most ubiquitous ways people in this world are described. And we're either a glass half empty or a glass half full kind of a person. I said, screw that. Throw those glasses over your shoulders, hold your own glass, grab a pitcher with whatever your favorite beverage might be. We're recording this on a Friday, so some might guess what that might be later in my day. But how do you make your own glass half full? How do you control that? And that's where optimism and autonomy come into play. They're two tools. I actually describe them in one of the chapters as two tools and two layers in a toolbox. Right? One, the grounding of optimism needs to be put in place before you can really supercharge that autonomy. And I'm not talking about toxic optimism. It's optimism that's on a balance with realism. And it's also, Joe, the book was informed with my own journey. I spent 20 years, I managed over $100 million in paid ad spend across my corporate career. I was laid off twice in that journey. I burned out, as I mentioned before. But that's not only my story. I faced all these challenges and I dug in with those two tools to lift myself back up. I lost my mom coming up on 11 years ago to ALS. That's an incredibly difficult thing to go through, losing anyone in life that you love and care about. But I always saw that even through an experience like that, it opened up incredible doors. There were silver linings that came out of that experience because it wasn't an experience of loss where I just laid down and didn't get back up again. I got back up and kept flexing the muscle. It opened up opportunities. It's actually brought me, you know, when you start to widen the light shown on things. I mean, think about, let me pull this back a little bit, Joe. Think about a street light. You're walking down the street, there's a street light above the sidewalk. Your keys fall out of your pocket, but they don't fall out in the street light. They're just outside of that. Where are you naturally going to look for those keys? It's in the light of the street light. So much in life and this glass half full mentality is about looking a little outside of that streetlight, what we can actually see, into places that we can't actually see. That's a transformative way to think about life. I don't know. I though don't even just talk about my own story. I tie back in a lot of positive psychology that comes from Martin Seligman, who's recognized as the father of positive psychology. And then, there are thousands of stories across human history as well of people who've faced incredible challenges, and they've used optimism and autonomy to elevate and lift themselves back out of those challenges. And it's my viewpoint that those are the two game-changing pieces to have that perspective of no matter how dark and thick the clouds might be today, always knowing that that sun is still behind the clouds hiding. And if you wait until tomorrow or 2 days in the future, it's going to come out again. The sun is always there. It's persistent, at least until we enter a weird planetary shift here when we don't have that anymore. But, I all of our listeners here, I can almost promise, unless AI magically creates something where we are able to live eternally in the next few months, we'll still be here in another 3 million years when this universe might look completely different.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to look at things with optimism, because there's a lot of negative stuff going on in the world, whether it's politically or in the media or in your own life or the economy. There's so many things that people can look at and say, oh my goodness, everything's so doom and gloom and the world is horrible. But really, we're in one of the greatest times in the history of mankind. And we
Right.
have to remember that it's important to sort of control the narrative of your day. I'm a big firm believer in the Stoic movement. I love the Stoicism, but that's not necessarily optimism versus pessimism. It's more the idea that things are not inherently good or bad. They just are. The only thing you have control over is how you react to those things.
Boom.
So whether it's the loss of a life, your mother, the
Yep.
loss of a job, feeling burned out, being overweight, whatever is bothering you internally, you have two options in how you can handle those things. And
Right.
and you have the exact right attitude about it. It's find the silver lining in all of the things that seem scary. Look
Right.
just outside of that light where you might not want to focus your attention because it's not in the light. So it's got to be bad if it's over there, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's all an
Right.
internal mechanism that you get to control. And the quicker you realize that and come to terms with that, the more amazing things that you will notice. I love how you talk about the loss of your mother, and that although it was a very terrible thing to go through, there was doors that opened because of it. And the only reason you saw those doors is because you chose to focus on the okay side of that horrible situation.
Right.
And it doesn't change the loss. It's just you
And
saw something in it.
well, and the important thing going through challenges that isn't productive, right, is people go through a challenge and then they put their hands up over their eyes and they don't
Yeah.
even look for the door, right? So, and that's a tough thing to unlock, but that's something I love to work on as well. Is how do you open up the doors to sitting in that space? And Stoicism, I'm a big fan of that as well, about understanding where you come from. And I think that that's valuable, but you also need to know that there's a future that's based on your unique story and where you've been, that takes you to really valuable places in the future. It's our past informs our future. It's the forward motion when we keep going that's the game changer.
And you're absolutely right. And what I love about looking into the past is it might seem, 2,000 years ago, how would they have any idea what we're going through? It was almost identical. Maybe they don't have cell phones and Twitter, but you know what? They had loss of life. They had pandemics. They had wars. They had politics. They had hunger. They had all the things that we deal
Well,
with that we think are
they
so
they
unique
had
to us.
they had innovation. They
Yeah.
had creative minds pushing the world forward. We've just accelerated a lot. One of the things that I actually see missing in this, though, and this is something I may be working on and weaving into a new book project, is talking about grace as a modern leadership principle. Because our world, a good theme I think to get into here, Joe, is our world doesn't need faster leaders. It needs fuller ones. And, everything that I work to build, from my coaching to the podcast to the first book, is working to create a future where that leadership is sustainable and it's not sacrificial. I mean, you know, the legacy I'm chasing here is to prove that both optimism, autonomy can lead to execution, and they actually can really productively coexist together. And that energy, when it's harnessed well, I see it actually as the ultimate unfair advantage, even when we look at where we are today.
And I love the leadership idea of a fuller leader, because how many times have you worked for a boss that maybe on the resume is fantastic, but like executing and how they deal with their employees, they're terrible. And they are barking and whipping you and telling you what to do, but they're never the ones that get their hands dirty. The
Right.
people that I always work the hardest for, and what I try to do as a boss myself now for other individuals, is be the first person to get on, roll my sleeves up and get to work. And like, we're in this together. Just because I am the AKA boss doesn't mean that you're below me. We're in this fight together. And to be that full, graceful leader is how you build loyal employees and people that want to be your brand ambassadors, because they go, man, he treats me right. He takes care of me, treats me like a human, not like an asset. Right. And I think that's something that's really lost in translation, especially when you get to those bigger $100 million companies that you got that kind of money. It's like, the pawns below me. But the really great business leaders are the ones that don't treat people like that. They treat their COO the same way they treat the janitor of the business. And those
Right.
are the most successful people in the world. And I love
Right.
that that's a project that's on your mind, and
I, I
definitely
mean,
keep me
I
posted
mean,
on that.
look at, for instance, Joe, someone like Davis Smith, right, of Cotopaxi, the founder of Cotopaxi. That company is grounded in a mission-based environment. They're a very successful company, but they give back not only to indigenous communities, but also to the employees that work for the company. And I've always been, even in my corporate career, my early days as a leader, I always viewed the teams that I was managing, the people that I was hiring. My perspective was, as long as they come in with an open-mindedness, an openness to learning, and an energy to just keep going, I'm going to help enable you to succeed in the role that I've hired you for. But also, I want to give you the tools that lead you to the next door in terms of a job or a pivot in life, and then the door after that. That was always the perspective of uplifting. And that helps raise the ocean for all the boats, right? And that's where diversity comes into play. Diversity and inclusion of different perspectives. It's not a disabling factor. It's an incredibly empowering, enabling factor to lean into.
And you're absolutely right. It's so important to build the people up around you so that they can go on to be the best versions of themselves. And it's not something like, I hired you to do this role, I got to keep you in this little box over here. And I've said this on other podcasts, but it's like the famous Steve Jobs quote is, I don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. I hire smart people so they can tell me what to do. I'm going to hire somebody that can make myself and my business and my products better. I'm not going to hire someone and stand over their shoulder and be like, you got to do things the way I do things. People are different. I don't care if you work 8 to 5 or 5 to 8. I don't care. As long as you get your job done, I'm not going to make this a babysitting job. And I know
Right.
some certain types of jobs, they're on a schedule, and that's fine. But the reality is, let people thrive where they are best at. And it's amazing how far they can help you go if you just let them be themselves and give them a little guidance on what you want, and sort of let them run with their own initiative, and then help them grow and build them up. That's truly the essence of being a good leader, in my opinion.
Well, it's the perspective of using power to drive positive impact, right? It's about positive impact more than anything else. And if you elevate versus push people down, micromanage, lack of transparency, you build that trust factor. You also can meet people, as a leader, you can meet your team, your employees where they are, not always where you're coming from, the background. And I actually I love when you've got non-linearity and understand what people's origin story is that led them to where they are today, because that's the deeper level of where you come from. I was honestly speaking with someone earlier today who who had a TED talk. We were talking about something completely different about how you can recover from a brain injury. And halfway through the conversation, I said, "Can you tell me a little bit more about why that's the TEDx talk that you delivered? Like, why did you talk about recovering from a brain injury?" What I figured out that when that person I was having a conversation with was 18, they were speeding on a road. They avoided a truck that was going over the yellow median, and they rolled their car 6 times off a cliff. That would never have been unlocked had I not paused and taken a second to go, this is incredible what you've done, but what's the backstory? Just quickly. And talk about, I that's a traumatic experience, right? And I love actually to talk about trauma quite a bit because, Joe, the trauma that you've faced in your life or any of our listeners have faced in their life feels like it's all the way up to the top of their head inside. My trauma feels up to the top of my head, just like the trauma you've experienced is to the top of your head. But if you, for instance, that earlier conversation, when that was explained to me, the situation that that person went through that led them to deliver that TED talk, I felt like my trauma was 8 times smaller than his trauma. So outwardly, we have a perception of trauma on how we view other people. But if we take it with that space and that grace to meet people where they are, I can appreciate the fact that my trauma feels significant, but your trauma is just as significant and impactful. And I think that's a missing piece of the way the world has moved over the last few years of trying to figure out what brought people to where they are today and being cognizant of the fact that nothing is perfect in this world. No one has a perfectly simple path or road that they've been on. There have been bumps, and the bumps are what actually lead them to understand the success that they've reached now. And if you self-identify that that's happened and you have people to help unlock that around you, then you can start to see, oh, I'm unique, and unique is what actually builds me. That gives me the motivation to grow my influence and say, oh, I can succeed. I can keep moving forward. And here's the incredible value that I, as a unique individual in this world, bring to the table. And that's, of course, luckily every business in this world is still run by a human, even with the advent and the upswing in AI. I hope that continues to be the case. Meet humans where they are, where they come from.
Yeah, you're right. And the origin is really important to get to the bottom of when you're meeting new people and prospects and clients and people that you just want to associate with, because those experiences did mold them into what they are today. And you're right. A lot of times we have these conversations where we're just talking to respond and not to listen and learn. So I
Right.
love that you talk about how you actually just said, hey, wait a minute, before we go forward, why did you do this? You actually took that 1 second to ask a question geared towards them, and you learned a whole new piece of information that really put their whole personality into perspective for you. And this is sort of a cheesy segue into your origin story and your background being, a marketing agent and working with all these giant agencies had led you to your new podcast, what you talk about. And, Podtopia Insider is for Podtopia Network,
Yeah.
which is geared
Right.
to podcasting and marketing and PR agencies. So let's talk a little bit about your podcast, which
Sure.
is anything in paid advertising real? Because you're sort of an expert in this. So what made you want to have a podcast about this, and give us the quick backstory on that?
Well, Joe, I spent that time in a corporate marketing career. Again, I managed $100 million in paid ad spend. I, I could count on two hands the number of times I've clicked on paid ads in my own personal consumer journey. But that idea, testing what's real, is actually what inspired the podcast. And just to wordsmith, is anything real in paid advertising? That's okay, though, of course. And when I started it, I thought it would be just about marketing tactics, but over time, it's become so much more. It's actually turned into this intersection of leadership, energy, and truth in this ever changing world. And it's a place where agency founders, entrepreneurs, and creatives come on and talk about what's real, what's noise, and what's next. And, it's raw, it's honest, it's snappy. My target when I started was 10 to 20 minutes. They're closer to 20 minutes. That's still a lot more short form than many other podcasts out there, but it allows it to keep a punchy energy to it. And sometimes it's hilarious, and it weaves in talk about burnout, belief systems, maybe working around some of the AI hype, and then the myth of overnight success. It's all encompassing. And the best part is that the conversations feed directly back into that Energy OS system. The podcast, I look at it as a lab. I test some ideas in real time with some of the sharpest minds in business and entrepreneurship. And then it turns that Energy OS. It's not just theory; it's tested and it's lived and it's battle proven through those conversations. One of my favorite moments, at least to date, was when a guest told me, Adam, the show feels like group therapy for people who pretend they have it all together. And that's deeply impactful. That's the best compliment I've gotten on that, outside of, even cracking the top 100 in the business category on Apple. And I have a screenshot in my back pocket being one spot above Alex Hormozy a few weeks ago. That's like, print that on the back of a t-shirt for myself. But that compliment sits in the back of my mind and has allowed me to say, oh, this is impacting people who maybe have never even done marketing, but they understand where I'm coming from here.
Yeah, and I think that is a great compliment, but there's so much truth to that. It's people like to present themselves like we've got it all figured out. And even a guy like Alex Hormozy, who's you see him on all the videos and everything, he looks like he's buff and he's got a beautiful wife and multi-million-dollar companies. But when you actually hear some of his podcast or his interviews, he's a really down-to-earth, humble guy. And he talks about he didn't just get lucky. Obviously, there is a luck factor to getting that big break, but he was tenacious. He was the guy that just outworked everyone around him. There is no overnight success. I love seeing the ads for the, copy my system here and in 6 weeks you'll have a yacht and you'll be this multimillionaire. And it's like, those do not work. There is no viral click button that you can click and just make yourself famous. It doesn't work that way. It works by being tenacious, by grinding, by never stopping. And again, you can't do that to the level of burnout. You got to have that energy going, but you got to do it the right way, and you got to target the right audience to do it smart and efficiently. Right. And again, I think I love what you said about your show, like what's real, what's noise, and what's next. So for you in this podcast and energy system, what's next for you and what's on the horizon for Adam W. Barney?
I mean, it's delivering this energy OS system to more leaders in the world. That's one piece of it. Really digging into, that sustainable energy, knowing that you can't pour from an empty cup, you can't scale from an empty tank. That's next. Growing as anything real and paid advertising is a lot of fun. I've recorded some incredible conversations that aren't out there yet. One that is out there in the wild is actually with someone named Mike Tedasco, who's the former head of innovation at PayPal. That's a fun conversation because he equates the journey that we're on with AI right now to the George Lucas arm of CGI development that came out of Star Wars. That's a fun conversation to get into. Yes, we talk about paid media, marketing in general, but it's more just about different perspectives. He's now a professor of AI entrepreneurship at San Diego State University. There are more episodes coming out like that in the future. So subscribe, check out the different episodes. It's up on YouTube. That's actually been fun to not only just bring the voice to the podcasting world, but the video. And, reach out to me at adamwbarney.com. I've got a free tool called the Energy Blueprint, that I'm happy to share. And I also, am excited about working towards that second book. That's something I want to work on and reframe grace in a really productive way.
I can't wait to get my hands on that book. I love what you've done so far. Again, you can find the Scale Smarter system. You can find the book, Make Your Own Glass Half Full, The Path to Empowered Optimism and Autonomy. You can find those all at adamwbarney.com. Also, links to his podcast, Is Anything Real in Paid Advertising? I do have to check out that Mike Tedesco podcast now because anything Star Wars related, I'm already interested. So you had me there right when you brought that up. But, innovation, it's something that can't happen by mistake. It takes intention, it takes effort, and it also takes energy. So make sure you're guarding yours. Learn more about the Energy OS system, adamwbarney.com. Again, I'll put links around this video. But with that in mind, Adam, I really appreciate you coming on to Podtopia Insider. I would love to keep the momentum going, and I'm going to be subscribing and tuning in, man. So, yeah, awesome. Anything you want to end with?
I just hope that this conversation today reminds everyone listening that the goal isn't to grind harder. It's to stay energized enough to keep building what matters. So, thanks for listening, and remember, protect your energy, scale smarter, and make your own glass half full.
Okay, so now final thought, hot seat question. It is Friday. What are you pouring in your cup to make it half full? You said, I think I can guess, but what is it going to be for you?
I think it's going to be a nice hazy IPA later this evening once the kids are in bed. So we'll see.
Not a bad choice, my friend. I might have to do a glass of scotch, but we'll see. It depends on if my daughter has her friends over tonight, which sounds like that's happening. So maybe not tonight, but Saturday night we'll get back to that.
Perfect. Awesome.
Adam, appreciate you coming on to Podtopia Insider, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Joe.
That's a wrap on this episode of Podtopia Insider. If you found value today, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For more resources, recommendations, and insider tips, visit podtopianetwork.com. Let's build a smarter podcast, one tool at a time. See you next time on Podtopia Insider.